Welcome back to our next Decent Med Spotlight. Today we are here with Kristina Hess. She is a clinical nutritionist. She's a registered dietitian and she's also a health coach. Most importantly, she specializes in Nutrigenomics. It's looking at the gene code and determining your nutrition plan. Kristina, introduce yourself.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me. I'm a functional nutritionist who looks at your unique biology to establish a personalized plan that is right for you. So I do that through functional lab testing, nutrigenomics, like you mentioned, the genetics of nutrition. So looking at your micronutrient usage, and then looking at stool testing to see how your microbiome is doing, plus food sensitivities you might have. And just those three tests alone really help me hone in on creating a highly customizable plan that's right for you.
I love that because, in our first episode, our other functional nutritionist said, don't guess, test. So I
Yes.
like that everything stems from the test. But you touched on a lot, so we have a lot of places we're going to go today. But first, let's start with the stool testing.
Sure.
So, what are some things that you find when it comes to that test? And how does that help you in determining how people can help with things like gut health?
Yeah, great question. So it's interesting, right? Most people only reach out to a nutritionist to help with weight loss. Uh, so what happens usually is that people will reach out to me for weight loss, and as we're diving deeper into what's going on with them, we find there are other symptoms, maybe even they have a diagnosed condition and they never thought that condition could be alleviated or improved by better nutrition, better gut health. So, what I see with the stool testing I run is that certain bad bacteria are highly correlated to certain issues. Um, for example, I'll just give you one case study. A woman that I'm working with now who has psoriatic arthritis had elevated levels of a few bad guys, we would say. So elevated gut dysbiosis, and one of them, which is very highly correlated to skin issues, S. aureus. So sometimes you can see clinical correlation to certain health conditions and certain bad bacteria. So there are protocols to help reduce bad bacteria, elevate good bacteria, and also we don't want to put foods in the body that would create more inflammation. So that's why I love food sensitivity testing. And the one that I'm using now is phenomenal. It's called the P88 dietary antigen test. They have no affiliation to them. Their test tests 4 different immune pathways. So most food sensitivity tests on the market that you can buy will only test one pathway. Or if you go to an allergist, they'll also only test one pathway, which is the IgE, immunoglobulin E, that gives you that histamine response, like hives or anaphylaxis. And then the over-the-counter kind of like direct-to-consumer ones are, are IgG tests, so immunoglobulin G tests. Now, this test tests 4 pathways, so not even just those 2. So it's very sensitive, it's very comprehensive, and for that reason, I really, really like it. It's really elevated my practice and what I can offer people.
Definitely. And after this, I would love to get one of your case studies so we can post that on the website
Okay.
because looking at case studies is extremely important. I did a meeting with a guy and he mentioned that when I think about holistic and functional medicine, the first thing I think about is the evidence. And
Yes.
the reality is that there isn't enough case studies out there, and there isn't enough tests. Can you speak more on the benefit of, and you touched on it briefly, on how the tests and the case studies can help people to get a comprehensive look at their whole entire health, not just when it comes to weight loss, but in general?
Yeah. Yeah. So, with the advent of GLPs, which have been a godsend to a lot of people, um, it's still only creating sort of that exterior change of just getting smaller. It doesn't necessarily mean you don't still have inflammation in your body, your arteries aren't clogged, your joints don't hurt, you don't still get the migraines, or you still like your acid reflux is gone, or your constipation is alleviated. So if you are still symptomatic and you don't feel good, you don't sleep well, you still are depressed or anxious, and yet you've lost 40, 50 pounds, that's great. That is amazing. Probably your blood sugar is better. It's easier on your heart. And there are a lot of health benefits to having a healthy weight. However, it's not everything. And so I would really invite people to think more deeply about their health. Think about their brain health, right? Think about healthy aging. Think about their bones. I got into genomics because years and years ago, I decided to try a vegan diet. I was just very experimental with things. And that was a disaster for me. I know there are people that thrive on it, but I have higher requirements for protein that I didn't know about. I don't convert certain nutrients from plant-based sources. I didn't know about it. I didn't know my genetics at the time. And so what ended up happening was that I broke 2 bones back to back pretty much, just from my vegan diet. And later, fast forward, I find myself in graduate school studying this, and my mind, like my brain literally exploded, and I immediately ran to go get my genetics done and interpreted, and just blew me away what I learned about myself. And that is why I don't prescribe anything cookie cutter. Everyone's just a wee bit different. So the nuance is where the fun is. Yeah.
I love that because in the first episode, our nutritionist spoke about, especially when it comes to aging, how a plant-based diet can lead to people living to 70 and living a great life. But what we found, speaking with our Ayurvedic physician a couple episodes later, is like you mentioned, everyone's in Ayurveda dosha is different.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, when I eat a lot of meats, I have constipation,
Mm.
so it's bad for me. And
Mm.
I found that a vegan diet is probably better for me. But as you
Interesting. I love
mentioned,
that.
everybody's different. My
Yes.
father, for example, he doesn't struggle with constipation. He's almost 70 years old, and he eats bacon and eggs and protein, and he's fine. But my
Mm-hmm.
mom and and my question to that point is, have you found a commonality between being lactose intolerant and lactose sensitive and needing a vegan diet versus people who are not lactose sensitive or lactose intolerant, and they, like you mentioned, probably need more protein? Have you found any correlation there?
Oh, those are two. It's a great question, and the whole dairy is its own category. I would not categorize that together with animal protein at all. Um, and so they're different. And you'd have to, yes, you can look at the genetics for dairy for lactase persistence, and only 1/4 of the world has the, we're going to call it mutation, the adaptation to carry on and be able to break down the lactose. So it's actually very unusual. You're totally weird if you can do it. And but that's not the case with the higher need for protein. And for you, I'd, before giving you any recommendations, would have to see those three pieces, your genetics, your food sensitivities to see if you do have intolerance to animal proteins. I did have a young woman recently with a lot of stomach pain who was highly allergic to almost all the proteins except for fish and dairy. And so she said, basically, you're asking me to be a pescatarian vegan. And I said, yeah, like that's right. That's what we're going to do. Plus, her stool test revealed lots of issues there. So I think when you do a lot of gut healing work, whether it's you're tackling the bacteria or any fungal issues, or you're tackling intestinal permeability, then you can reintroduce foods that maybe you had issues with before. So, and it should be kind of an ongoing thing, not like a one and done kind of a thing. Your genetics are never going to change. So that when you test those, you test them and you have that forever. And you can always, I go back to my test all the time. I'll give you a recent example. So I did my very first bodybuilding show in April. And to prepare for that, I did do, thank you. I did do a steak and eggs diet plan. Okay. It was very ketogenic and very like low carb, which works great for me. However, eating steak every day led to elevated levels of ferritin and elevated uric acid, which can create gout. My insulin was super low, great blood sugar super low, and I lost the weight I needed to lose. So here's an instance with myself where, yeah, the weight's not the whole picture of health. Got some issues in the blood work, and I went back to, I said, this is so interesting because there's so many people, my friends in the carnivore space, in the low carb space, who are saying, eat steak every day. It's no problem. And it was a problem for me. So I went back and looked at my genetics, and sure enough, I have a copy of, iron overload that I just kind of missed before because I wasn't ever going to eat steak every day in any other situation. It just made prepping for a show very easy to eat the same thing every day and be able to track it and manage it. So I think sometimes also issues will crop up when people are very extreme in their eating plans because, if you're overly restricted and in areas too, that can cause its own issues. So that's a whole separate topic.
That's very interesting because you're right. You have seen a lot of talk about carnivore diet, vegan diet, when, like you mentioned, it's all about going back to your genetics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the same as you. You're not the same as my mom and my dad, et cetera, et cetera. And
Yep.
we all have a different gene code, and there's all fruits and veggies that we can eat. For instance, I like to do intermittent fasting.
Nice.
But what I found is that sometimes I'm losing too much weight when I do that.
Mm-hmm.
So went up to me and said, Sam, it looks like your face is showing that you're getting skinnier.
Yeah.
So, and granted, I'm here in Mexico where people are a lot thicker and they eat a lot more food. So, that definitely is something too. But my question to that point is there anything that we all need as far as foods, or is it really all case by case?
Yeah, we all need the essential amino acids. So there's 9 of those. And then we all need essential fatty acids. So there's, omega-3s we need, there's saturated fat we need. We need those to survive and thrive. So we need to get those things from the diet. Otherwise, we will end up malnourished. So yes, we all need anything that's labeled essential.
But where you get it is different.
Exactly. People can get, they can take, if you're vegan, for example, you can take branched chain amino acids. So, supplement them if you're not going to get them from animal protein. And we all need 2 grams of leucine. That is very, very important. That has been highly studied. It's it's out in the sphere. 2 grams of leucine for your skeletal muscle is very important. So yeah, but we all need the branched chain aminos and essential fatty acids. So carbohydrates, which are all the plant foods, right? All of them are carbohydrates, whether it's fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, or grains. I favor having plenty of fiber in the diet. It's better for our gut microbiome. So I don't believe in us not having any fiber. People argue about that too, but I do think that having lots of sugar in the diet is completely unnecessary and not good for our health. I can see in the genetics who can tolerate grain better than others. And so, some people are like myself are very predisposed to elevated blood sugar and that path to diabetes. And so low carbohydrate diet's better for us. And then for someone like you who can tolerate lots of carbohydrate, lots of plant food, obviously vegans are mostly doing whole foods, which is the ideal for any human being is whole food diet, not processed food diet.
You touched on some great stuff there. And before I get there, I want to mention something you said earlier about your show. So, what I found in looking at athletes, because you're an athlete, is especially when it comes to vegan diet. So, I look at an athlete like Nate Diaz, for example. Nate Diaz is a fighter, and another one is Sugar Sean O'Malley. These are both UFC fighters. Both were vegan at one point. Sugar Sean O'Malley went to a meat diet, and Nate Diaz stayed on a plant-based diet. Sugar Sean O'Malley went on to win a title, and Nate Diaz's career faded. So my question is, do you find that in athletes specifically that, especially in your case, that they need more protein because the work or the effort that they're putting, especially if they're an NFL athlete, because Tom Brady, he utilizes a mainly plant-based diet, but he's still utilizing meat. Same thing with LeBron James. There is people like Chris Paul that are vegan and they still play longer, but again, he has seen a lot more injuries. So have you seen any correlation between athletes that go to the plant-based route and they lead to more injuries, like in your case, or is that also case by case?
It's very case by case. I do think athletes require more protein, and it's just way more efficient to get it through animal sources. When you're plant based, you really have to do it smartly, so that you don't injure yourself, and you kind of have to go through hoops to get it. You're going to have to probably either volume eat, let's say like a lot of rice and beans together, because together those two things make a complete protein. Or, so there's volume, right? A lot of volume, or you have to take supplements. You're having to do protein powders and, like I say, taking, branched chain amino, ways to ensure that you're hitting those protein targets. It's just so much harder. Can it be done? Yes. But it's way more efficient to have a little piece of meat, it's easier.
What I found is being out of the US, I can eat chicken, I can even eat some cheese, I can eat, I do eat more meat. When I'm in the United States, I tend to, if I'm going to eat meat, like you mentioned earlier, it's going to be pescatarian. Have you ever been outside the US, and have you noticed that even with clients that you've had that might live outside the US? And what is that disconnect there?
Oh, that's a fascinating topic. So, I'm bicultural. My mother is from Latin America. She's Costa Rican, and I actually grew up overseas. I grew up in South America and then in Italy. And yeah, we lived in Italy for 3 years. I it is so noticeable how different the food is. It's really noticeable in Europe how different the bread is, for example. Um, you don't you just you don't feel the same at all when you eat their food, and they don't have all the chemicals in their food that we allow into our food. So they're much stricter in the EU with like whatever their version of the FDA is. I don't even know, but I think it's upwards of 30,000 chemicals that we allow that they do not. It's really wild. Same thing, visiting family in Costa Rica over the years. It's fresh food. It's ceviche. It's rice and beans. It's plantains. It's simple. Simple. My mom calls it, really good, wholesome peasant food, right? And fresh fruits or whatever. When we lived in Venezuela, we'd eat mangoes that fell to the ground, just off of trees. And so, yeah, we don't have that in the United States. And what I like to do, I live in Vermont now, is go to farmers markets and places that I can support, that I know, it's like locally sourced and fresh, and so it feels good to do that. And I know that it's hard to do that because not everybody has the resources to do that too. That's another rabbit hole to go down. But yeah, the whole food thing is very, very complicated in our country. It's very unfair. I don't understand why the cheapest food is the worst food. And yeah, there's a lot that's wrong and needs fixing, and people need education, and they need to be their own advocates, and unfortunately some of the very best food or best quality food is so expensive and so unattainable.
So how do lower class people, especially in the States, eat efficiently?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I know there are some good programs out there, but it's a huge problem. And it is so much easier for people to go to a fast food joint and get and feed their whole family for very cheaply, right? But it's cheap ingredients, um, cheap fast fake, right? That's sort of and it's a problem. It's a problem. I don't have a good solution for it, but education is paramount, and people, so that slowly people can start to make their own better choices and make decisions. Maybe there'll be a whole movement towards more gardening and homesteading and that sort of thing. We'll see.
Well, to that point, one mission of ours is that utilizing our apothecary, we are working to make treatments like yours more affordable
Mhm.
so that people who can afford it can buy in and pay for the plants on our apothecary that will go into a pot so that treatments like yours and other treatments on our platform can be more affordable and close to zero. And all of us are just funded from the apothecary, which is the
Love that.
goal. And I really want to go down this rabbit hole of gut microbiome. And I
Okay.
want to start with an anecdote.
Mm.
So I about maybe 30 days, 60 days ago, I had KFC here in Mexico. I had it the first time and nothing really happened. I had it a second time and it messed me up bad. I had massive gut issues, and then it
Mm.
led to blood in my stool.
Mm.
And I didn't know what was wrong. I thought I should fast. I didn't know how to fix it. And then I went to really now, I thought that it was soybean oil, that it was maybe that it was the oil in the food. And if I just eat pure. So, and then another anecdote to that point is that I struggle with constipation. I
Okay.
have to get a lot of chia seeds, and my mom does as well. She has to get I think they have them in Vermont, the Alessia cookies, the vegan cookies. She
Okay.
has to eat about 2 of those a day in order for her to, use the bathroom.
Mm.
I have to. I mean, it's bad. I have to. Yeah, I
We
have
got to
my.
get you some stool testing.
Yeah, both of us. You know,
Yes.
I got chia seeds that I have to do every day. Yesterday I had some bean tacos, which was really good, and that's helped me because I learned from our nutritionist that it was either it was one of the episodes we did. I apologize to who it was, but they told me that beans. I know who it was. It was our natural path. So definitely check out that episode, everybody. It was our most recent episode where she told me that beans really help with constipation. So, for anyone struggling with constipation, what are the steps and how can myself and anyone else improve their gut microbiome?
Okay, so let's say you can't afford testing, so we don't know. Now, I will say blood in the stool concerning, and could potentially mean you have ulcerative colitis or something like that. That is an actual condition, which says to me that you have food intolerances, and some probably some digestive insufficiency. So, you'd probably benefit from digestive enzymes to help you break down your food better. And then potentially, if there are gut integrity issues, then there are different things that you can take, whether it's like marshmallow root, licorice, sort of thing. There are a lot of nutrients, right? And there's supplements that have blended things for the gut lining. And then it would be very interesting to see what bacteria are in there. That you can't guess on that. Right? That's where the other functional medicine person was right. We test. We don't guess, because just throwing probiotics at a situation, you don't know if that's helpful. Because also a person could have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or something like that. So that would be like adding fuel to the fire without addressing the problem first. Now, if someone gets like more yeasty, like any women out there get yeast infections, or if men are having sort of like itchy butt, that can be more fungal. So foods like garlic are really help antifungal. Um, Oregano oil is great antifungal. So it just depends on the situation. But yeah, I would love to get you to do a stool test.
Yeah, it seems like it all comes back to testing because without the test,
You
you
don't know.
really can't do anything. So let's start from the beginning. What is gut microbiome?
The gut microbiome is just a fancy word for saying, like, what is the ecosystem in the gut? So we live with bacteria and yeast that are part of the natural ecosystem, and we need them. We need bacteria to help us digest our food. So yeah, that constipation is not normal. Um, and when we take antibiotics, which is very common for anyone from the Western world, uh, whether we're kids or we've had an infection, even as recently as a year ago, it means that you now have a compromised gut microbiome because you've basically nuclear bombed the whole landscape, the whole soil, and not just killed off whatever was bad, but you killed off whatever was good. And it can take up to 2 years to reconstitute the gut microbiome after antibiotics. Um, and yeah, people are always surprised about that. They'll take probiotics while they're taking their antibiotics, and then that's it. And that doesn't make any sense to me, because taking them while you're on antibiotics is doing absolutely nothing. You're killing off whatever you're taking, and it makes more sense to, if you're going to do a whole removal of something bad, do the removal part of the protocol. You could be taking antimicrobials, an antiparasitic if you have parasites. you do that whole part, you do a whole removal before you do a repair and restore protocol. So, yeah, it should be done in stages and phases. But think of it like soil. Like if you plant a plant and you want it to grow, it needs great soil. It needs nutrients in the soil, and that's like our soil. That is our that bacteria from the gut microbiome. It speaks to our brain. It is literally the engine that actually runs the show, and it's really fascinating. There's a story of an Olympian who had, I don't remember her name, but she had very bad C. diff, which causes very severe diarrhea. So she was hospitalized, and they're just like having a really hard time getting rid of this C. diff. And so fast forward, eventually, they recommended fecal transplant, which is, it's pretty experimental, but they were kind of desperate to fix her. And so a cousin of hers volunteered to donate, to do the help fecal transplant. And this cousin happened to be 30 pounds overweight, but super healthy. So they do the fecal transplant, and the Olympian got well, and she gained 30 pounds. Same gut bacteria.
Wow, that's interesting. I wonder, do you know why that is?
I mean, there have been studies on mice that have been done on this, like that, the actual landscape of that gut bacteria will change the outer landscape of that creature. And they've taken like, 2 mice who look the same, and then, doing a fecal transplant of an obese mouse into a lean mouse, and they become obese. So it just highlights the fact that the gut microbiome determines a whole lot about ourselves. We make 90% of our serotonin in the gut. And we just give the brain all the credit for everything. Like, oh, the brain's making all our neurotransmitters and everything. And it's really not the case. There's that whole gut brain connection, right? It's called the enteric nervous system. The gut talks to the brain. And look at people on the GLPs. I mean, what is it doing? It is changing brain signaling for cravings and appetite and satiety, because you're sending a signal to the gut to say, hey, stop eating. And it's talking to the brain. So yeah, we like really underestimate how important the gut microbiome is. I've been reading recent research because I'm launching a whole new sleep program. I recently got certified in cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and I'm going to combine it with stool testing and food sensitivity testing, because there's so many people with sleep issues. And then when you address sort of like the psychology of sleep, and then you address the gut, because there are so many interesting research papers on certain gut bacteria for sleep too. It's just fascinating.
It's interesting because those are connected. Because when I look back at when I had the bloody stool, my sleeps, even now, I'm still getting because now, I don't know if it's just because of the way my room is set up, because the window is right to the bed. So I wake up 6 o'clock no matter what. So my sleep schedule is still adjusting, and then just doing all this traveling. So you're 100% right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the vagus nerve is connected to the gut. Can you
Yes.
speak more on that?
Well, it's very connected to that relaxation response, right? Rest and digest system, they call it. Parasympathetic nervous systems. It's your digestion. So yeah, vagus nerve is almost like an emotional center, right? Like when you watch a movie that makes you feel something, or you listen to a piece of music that makes you feel emotional, that's your vagus nerve contracting. But we also, we get those butterflies when we get nervous or something. That's also like our gut is talking to us. Why do we feel it there? We don't feel it up here. We feel it in our gut. It's interesting.
Or even with somatic therapy, like yesterday, I went over the documentary that we did with PTSD.
Mm.
And what I noticed in that documentary, because a man had PTSD, he was a former Israeli soldier, and they utilized somatic therapy with plant medicine.
Mm.
So every day that he was doing the plant medicine, you notice that she was tapping. She was tapping on his back. She was getting while he was doing like combo, for example, and he was purging. She was tapping on his back. She was tapping on different parts of his body, and she's also a chiropractor. Because as you would agree, as you mentioned with dietitian and with nutrition, is that you want to have a bimodal approach. You don't want to just use one mode. You want to take the test and use a multiplicity of modalities.
100%. I actually use emotional freedom technique in my practice. So we do a lot of
Oh,
tapping. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can't just be like a one trick pony, because you never know what the testing is what it's for, is that identifying the 20%, which is your right strategy. But honestly, the 80% is the follow through. It's the psychology. It's well, what's going to make me actually stick to my plan, right? It's just that I really love the testing, because you could go all in, you could be 100% compliant on the wrong thing, and then it hurts you, like it did with my vegan diet. I don't want people to fracture their bones, or be nutrient deficient in some way if they follow, like, oh, this girl that should have been a vegan, she was doing sort of a carnivore thing because she had eliminated all the plants, but her stomach just hurt all the time. Well, like, okay, so you've gone all in on the wrong thing. That's a disaster. So finding your right thing is really important, but it's the follow through that humans have a tough part with. So like that's where mindful eating, emotional freedom technique, I do hypnotherapy, CBTI, like all these other tools that are more psychology based, heart math, like all these things to help people regulate their nervous system so they don't stress eat, so they sleep, so they can follow through on their goals, so they can, live their best life.
wow, I didn't know that you did hypnotherapy. That's awesome because
Not a lot of people want it though.
yeah, I spoke about it actually at a networking meeting, and this lady said, "Oh, I don't really believe in hypnotherapy." And it's funny because back to PTSD, I took a piece of that documentary and I showed it with a hypnotherapist. It was the part where Kumar Prasad was talking about PTSD and how PTSD is not attributed to only veterans, and a multiplicity of people have PTSD, and a lot of people have trauma. And he said that talk therapy and pharmaceuticals does a terrible job at helping with PTSD because you're not getting into the body. So when I spoke with our hypnotherapist, because they do psychedelic and plant medicine with somatic therapy, well, some people might say, well, I don't want to do the plant medicine. I don't want to do that. Well, when I spoke with a hypnotherapist, Sarah Green, she mentioned that you can still get out of the conscious brain, or as they say, the midbrain, and get into the subconscious with hypnotherapy without having to do that kind of medicine. So it all goes back to what you said at the beginning. It's a holistic approach. It's personalized. One person who, you take two veterans, one will do really well with psychedelic medicine and the other one will do really well with hypnotherapy. So everyone is case by case. And even how you mentioned utilizing a multiplicity of approaches, because one pain point that all nutritionists face is, like you mentioned, how do you stick with the plan? And when you get into the psychology, into the why,
Mm-hmm.
it does a great job at figuring out, okay, this is the reason why, this is how you can overcome it.
Yep.
And you mentioned sleep. So I want to dive into some of your studies since we're going to post your studies on decentmed.org/nutrigenomics. So can you speak on a study that you've done and what were the results? What did you see? Go in depth.
Do you mean just like client stories?
Yeah,
Because
great
I
question.
haven't published any studies.
So when I mentioned studies, so for example, our hypnotherapist, or a
Yeah,
better one would say, yeah, let's go with that one. So she had a group of people who couldn't pass their nursing exam. So the first slide, if you will, was so it's a little deeper than just a testimonial, but it's not as deep as a dissertation study either. So she said, "Okay, this is what I noticed. They couldn't pass. So what? This is what they were doing. This is what I did. I did subconscious reprogramming, and this was they couldn't pass for 12 years. Subconscious reprogramming was maybe the next slide. Then this were the results. So the results that she saw was they did subconscious reprogramming. They passed immediately. And 3 weeks later, they all passed. So
yeah,
that's an example of a study. Or another one is
yeah.
our
That's cool.
naturopath. She
Mm-hmm.
did a study with a woman who had a multiplicity of disorders. She had viral disorders. She had a history of trauma, a history of antibiotic misuse, a history of seeing a multiplicity of practitioners, and none of them could figure out why. So it was the title, it was what the issue was, it was what she saw when she applied the approach, what the approach was, and then her final thoughts. So that's what I mean when I say study. So not necessarily just
I
Christina
don't
did
have
a
one
great
of those.
job on me.
Yeah, I haven't published anything like that. I have a zillion stories, but every story is so uniquely different. I've had cases. I mean, some of the success stories. I had a woman during the pandemic, 77 years old, with lymphedema and lipedema, lifelong binge eater. She lost 100 pounds in 6 months, and she quit sugar and starch, and she was able to intermittent fast. She was able to get into ketosis. It got the monkey off her back for wanting to eat sweets. And she ate 2 meals a day. Her dessert would be a little cup of strawberries with a spoonful of monk fruit. And she lost 14 liters of water in her legs. And the lymphedema was deemed gone. And at 200 pounds, she was able to hire a trainer and start to work out because she could now move, right? She started at 300 pounds. I had a 15-year-old boy, um, quite large, like man boobs, very self-conscious, not moving much, kind of hiding out and not super self-expressed. And also put him on a low carbohydrate plan. And it changed his life. I mean, he was very insulin resistant, and he dropped a bunch of weight, and like his A1C normalized. He was so cute. He said, I can take my t-shirt off at the swimming pool. It was like like life changing for him. Um, I Oh my goodness, so many different stories. I had a woman. This was like a really interesting one. She wanted to just lose weight, but she had itchiness all over her body. And so we did an elimination diet, like very basic, like let's eliminate gluten and dairy and alcohol. And that alone alleviated quite a few symptoms, but she wasn't quite there. So then we tried some supplements, some like antihistamine type things like quercetin, that got her to another level. And eventually the itchiness was just her wrists. So I said, you know what, this is so weird. Can we do some mold testing? So mold testing is a urine test for mold and mycotoxins like aflatoxin, ochratoxin A. And she had high levels of molds in her body. So there are foods that are quite moldy, like coffee, like peanuts, like the melon family, like uh, chips, like corn chips. So there are foods that are just high in mold count. So we addressed that, and she had a mold problem in her house. So, you know, you can get to some things with some food, and then you can, supplementation might take you there, and then it's like, okay, we haven't quite gotten there yet. Let's do some testing. So, yeah, but I've worked with so many different clinical conditions, from cancer to different autoimmune issues. I had a lady who completely reversed her Hashimoto's, like no more antibodies. The endocrinologist couldn't believe it. She'd never seen it before. So she sends me people all the time now, because she's like, I've never seen that. I didn't know Hashimoto's thyroiditis was reversible. And it can be, if you put the soil in the and your body in the right conditions to heal, it will. I um I got into orchids recently. Like, my mom likes to buy like $20 orchids from Trader Joe's, and then she promptly kills them in like 2 weeks. So I just took all like these dead orchids, and I started watching YouTube videos about orchids, and it's very similar to a human in that, but an orchid is very sensitive. It needs the right soil. It needs the right sunlight. It needs the right nutrients. It needs the right, like, a little bit of humidity. And so bought a humidifier. Like, if you give that orchid the right condition, it could look nearly dead, like just about, you think there's nothing going to happen here. And it will rebloom, it will regrow. And a human is really no different. Like, we could be just almost like a lost cause. And then I know people with stage 4 cancer that have cancer free. So, like, when people say that that's not possible, it is possible. There's hope for anything that's going on for a person is fixable, reversible. But you also have to start with believing it's possible. If you say it's not possible, then it's not. But yeah, so being in positive belief is huge too.
So what we could do is, if you could turn some of those instances into like a slide, I can create a slideshow and just make that a case study, if you will, and put it on decentmed.org/nutrigenomics, so that, as you mentioned, because it is case by case, it's just, instead of a case study, it's just the benefits of nutrigenomics for X, Y, Z, P, Q, etc. So we could definitely do that. And then, like you mentioned earlier, when you finish that study that you're doing with sleep, we'll definitely want to get that on the website as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned cancer, and hopefully the powers that be don't take us down for this. But what I found in my research and looking at cancer treatments, like Oxy's treatment, Dr. Sebi, it all comes back to diet and nutrition. And it's funny because a lot of people know Dr. Sebi. And when they think of Dr. Sebi, they think of, like I mentioned earlier, vegan diet. He was super vegan diet. But the funny thing that people don't realize about Dr. Sebi, that I didn't even realize, was that Dr. Sebi prescribed and you touched on it with the intermittent fasting, a 14-day fast before eating anything. So no matter what diet you're utilizing, fasting is important. So can you touch on fasting and how you utilize it or how you prescribe it?
Yeah. So I'm friendly with Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who's a cancer researcher, and he talks quite a lot about fasting as a complement to cancer treatment, and to fast before chemotherapy to potentiate the chemotherapy. So cancer cells are fermenting cells that are sort of doing that cellular respiration outside of the norm, and they require glucose to do it, or glutamine. So the reason there's two camps on this. So there's the ketogenic people, because 80% of cancer it feeds on glucose, and then there's these other cancers that feed on glutamine, and so a vegan approach would be better for that, because glutamine is going to be an animal protein. So but fasting is fasting. So fasting's like no camp. It is just starving a tumor, not giving it any nutrients whatsoever, and your healthy cells will go on, and your body in a fast will enter the metabolic state of ketosis, and cancer cells cannot feed on ketones. So your healthy cells will be fed fatty acids and fat from your body fat, right? Like those fatty acids, and the cancer cells will die. And that's what, like, I'm very giving the oversimplified, very oversimplified how it works. But yeah, people can read up on Dr. Sebi or Dr. Thomas Seyfried, and Seyfried says if people could do a 7-day water fast, talking about water and salt only, the likelihood that they would develop cancer reduces by 90%. That's cancer in a lifetime. So if they did it one time, 7 days, 7-day water fast, one time, the likelihood that you would ever get cancer, it reduces by 90%. That's really, really significant. I've never been able to do a 7-day water fast. I feel like I'd have to go to some facility. And I think there is one in Northern California that does supervised water fasting. But because I don't think I could manage that by myself. But there are some people that can do it, no problem.
Yeah, that'd be tough for me too. I've done 3-day, and I like actually doing 1-days, and I try to do 1-days at least a couple times a year. And there's that theory about putting the body into ketosis. Does it happen at 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours? So like you mentioned,
the more metabolically healthy you are, the faster it happens. So 93% of Americans are not metabolically healthy. So they're inflexible and they don't switch over to fat burning very quickly. And so, yeah, it might take them 48 hours. The healthy human, healthy adult, because children could like be in there overnight and then they need to eat. So a healthy adult, 16 hours.
Interesting. So I guess that proves why intermittent fasting does such a good job.
Yeah, if you stop eating dinner early, you go to sleep, and then you get up and you work out, and you're healthy, and let's say you work out fasted, you're definitely making ketones. You're burning fat. And then yeah, maybe you go eat cereal or pancakes, you're kicked out of ketosis. But so they're like very healthy people who are metabolically flexible. They don't need to follow a prescribed low carb ketogenic diet because they're making ketones. They're like in and out. They don't need keto diet to do it. Keto diet is just to induce that because they're so inflexible. They're sugar burners, so they don't burn fat. But yeah, I mean, the goal is to be metabolically flexible, not to like, oh, you can never do one thing or another.
That's so interesting because when I think about health, you brought up the ketones. I noticed that, like, I look at my father, he's 69 years old. He's in great shape. He works out all the time, but he doesn't eat the healthiest. But like you mentioned, he does that other stuff. And also, I never realized that second camp, right? When you look at these two people, Dr. Thomas Seyfried, and then you look at these three guys. I mean, you go to our website, these are the three guys that I more feature that, like you mentioned, they go with the more vegan style approach. Dr. Max Gerson had the approach. It's actually, I think that might be where you're talking about in California. I'm not sure. But I know Gerson therapy is in California, and it is a cancer treatment.
No,
That
it's a different guy, Alan
okay.
something. He what's his retreat center? It's like North something. It's a water fasting place.
Yeah, so theirs is more. So Dr. Max Gerson, if you don't know or if the audience doesn't know,
I
they
don't know.
utilize coffee enemas. So
Okay.
again, the similar process Dr. Sebi is the fasting plus you detox the body. So it utilizes the coffee enemas so that you can completely detox the body and the liver will create bile.
Let's talk
Next,
about coffee for a sec.
yes, yeah.
So the genetics on caffeine. So it's caffeine, not coffee, but caffeine
Yeah.
specifically. So easy. It's like that. That's like the one of the CYP genes, CYP, liver genes. You're either a fast metabolizer of coffee or a slow metabolizer. So that's like one thing that people love to argue about is coffee. So or caffeine. Caffeine's either the devil or it's amazing and has all these health benefits. So it's like the two crazy camps. The people that are fast metabolizers love caffeine. They metabolize it quickly and they derive all of those benefits. They do better fat oxidation, better athleticism, all the things that make you feel good with coffee and liver protective, all that stuff. They you could get liver protection just from decaffeinated coffee, right? But that's a fast metabolizer. Slow metabolizers actually should avoid caffeine because they get the heart palpitations and they are more at risk for a heart attack, like legitimately at risk. And they tend to avoid it because they don't feel good when they have a boatload of caffeine. They feel it because they don't metabolize it fast. So that's another, like, it's an easy argument to settle when you look at the genetics.
That's so interesting because when I think about myself, like I mentioned earlier with the constipation, that's the only time I'll drink coffee. I don't drink coffee to wake up. I only drink coffee for constipation. So
Mm.
I wonder if mine is that I have a slow metabolism, and I should probably avoid it. Or what I'll do is for the caffeine, I'll inhale the steam. So I'll just sit over it and just do breath work and essentially have the steam hit my eyes and wake me up
Mm.
that way, black only. But I'm not a big coffee drinker. Like you mentioned, I do like energy drinks. I probably shouldn't because I know those are horrible for you. But that's kind of where
Yeah,
I get my caffeine is energy drinks. So can you speak on that, on energy drinks and
I'm not a fan.
okay.
Um, yeah, because a lot of energy drinks go way over the limit for caffeine, and so and they just dehydrate people quite a lot. And so I just wonder also if like your constipation has more to do with dehydration.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. Because I'm not doing what athletes do, where I'm having a jug a day. So to that point, how much water should I be drinking every single day?
Yeah. So the formula for baseline is half your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you'd want to have 100 ounces of water. If you have a cup of coffee or black tea, something caffeinated, so like an energy drink, you would want to do a 1-to-1 swap of water. So like a cup of coffee, you do a cup of water. Um, and then for every hour of physical activity, and this is very generalized because some people work out indoors, some people are outside in hot weather. So this is like, it could be anywhere from 16 to 24 ounces per hour of exercise. So most people are like chronically underhydrated.
Interesting, and that does play a massive role.
Mm.
For me, when it comes to exercise too, is I've spoken with this with multiple providers. I'm more of the international camp where I don't want to go to the gym. I would rather get my exercise from going on walks and being in nature. That's just me personally.
Well, there's a lot of therapeutic benefit to being in nature. What was the statistic I just read? Oh, I have it right here. A 50-minute walk through a wooded park. This is a study from UC Irvine with psychologist Gloria Mark, showed that these people perform better on memory and attention tasks than those walking along a busy street. And just 20 minutes in nature can help people feel less stressed and think more creatively. So there's a lot of benefit to just walk in nature. And we were designed to take a lot of steps.
Mm. It's funny because I was speaking about this yesterday. When you look at the self deletion rate and anxiety rates in the US versus like here in Mexico or Costa Rica or Italy, you see it's massively different. And obviously, those, yeah, I'll stick with Costa Rica because Italy's a first world country, or maybe second, one of the two. I think it's first world, right?
Yeah,
Pretty
it's
sure.
first world. Yeah.
So when you look at Costa Rica and Mexico, both second or third world countries,
Mm-hmm.
yet the self deletion and anxiety rates are almost non-existent. And obviously, there's multiple factors, like community is one, but one factor too, like you mentioned, is the fact that when people are getting exercise and going out, there's more in nature. When I look outside, I see trees, I see mountains. Because I'm in Puerto Vallarta, so I
Mm,
see all of that. When I was in Princeton, New Jersey, where my parents live,
yeah.
uh, it's a lot more. There is some trees and stuff, and there is some trees in Vermont too. But again, it's more of the busy street, and it's less of getting in tune with nature. And I
Yeah.
wonder if that plays a role. Do especially when it comes to nutrition too? Do you think that nutrition plays a role in the self deletion rates, the anxiety rates, and the depression rates that are in the United States?
It has to. It absolutely has to. Um, has to. I mean, there's probably also a lot of emotional trauma, and I'm not an expert in this at all, of course, but there would have to be also some nutrients missing, um, for a person, like for to get that bad, like that bad in the brain. And we know, Robin Williams, remember when he got sick? He got some kind of infection in his brain. And I mean, he did always struggle with depression, and humor was his way of coping with it. But it really was, he was infected by some kind of bacteria. And so yeah, it would have to be really serious trauma, um, re, you know, really really bad nutrition deficiency, um, and 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 then, or like an infection, like some kind of viral thing or bacterial meningitis type thing. Because you're not, yeah, it's not. There's usually a way out of things.
And that's the biggest takeaway that people can understand is not only don't test gas, but that nutrition is for so much more than weight loss. Even though I'm about to ask you a weight loss question,
Yeah,
it
so much more.
really is it's a complete picture. And
Yeah,
that's the thing I love about functional medicine and holistic medicine is
yeah,
that you focus on the tribunal, the mind, body, spirit, the
yeah.
every picture. So my question, and you have a video on this, and you can check out her YouTube page, but you touch on the three questions that people need to ask or answer when it
Mm.
comes to weight loss. Can you
Yeah,
tell?
sure. I call them the three C's of nutrition. So the clock, the timing. So this pertains to the question, when am I eating and how frequently am I eating? Number two is the calories. This is the question, how much am I eating? And that would be like, yes, if you're trying to lose weight and prepare for a bodybuilding show, you'd have to dial in your macros and count your calories. But number three is kind of where I live. It's the content. It's like, what what am I eating and what is right for me? And that is, um, really divisive in the nutrition space and really bio individual, and does pertain to your genetics and your gut microbiome and your food preferences, your food intolerances, your values, your religion. Like, so much goes into the what is my content and what it consist of. And of course, like I'm gonna assume that we're talking about people already following a whole food diet, which is like nobody. We're all having a little bit of processed food in our life.
Definitely.
So we all do. Me too. Like, but the aim is to really like aim for that 98-99% whole foods, and make a little treat or something, or packaged food just the tiniest portion of your life. So, but inside of that, the content gets complicated, as we've already discussed. So, but yeah, if it's weight, if you are just strictly all about weight, and you don't care about inflammation or your brain health, your bones, or any of the other stuff we've talked about, it is about the calories. It's about the calories and the macros. Like, let's be clear. You can eat skinny pop and boiled chicken, or just have like a pile of kale, and like, if you eat less, you're going to lose. So how you go about that weight loss is like, it's quantity, and it's but you could induce micronutrient deficiencies. You could still have inflammation, and then the content's all wrong.
It's funny because going back to what you said about the vagus nerve, I'm thinking about today. I had a strawberry smoothie, and I got no sugar in the smoothie. And at first I was like, this tastes horrible. And it's because, like you mentioned, my brain is telling me what I'm used to eating, which is sugary things, artificial stuff. So we're not used to eating natural foods. Because then I realized, I tasted it, I said, I really like coconut, because they put coconut in the smoothie. And I
Yeah.
really like the taste of coconut. But like you mentioned
In
earlier,
Mexico, you can get like a real coconut off the street they stick a straw
yeah,
in it, and you can sip it, and it's like, oh, the best.
yeah, it is. It is. And that's the thing, is that everything is natural here, but I'm still getting used to the natural, to eating natural and the taste of natural foods.
You know what's really cool is that your taste buds will change within a week.
Yeah, right.
So, I tell my clients it only takes you 72 hours to really get off of the bad stuff. It's like a heroin withdrawal. So if you're eating, soda and candy bars and chips and ice cream, like just crap, and instead you swap to like a piece of fruit as your dessert, and you have real food. You like have your piece of protein, you have a vegetable, and then you have a piece of fruit for dessert. Like, you will reset your taste buds within a week. So
The
fast.
weight loss too. The weight loss will come because,
Of course. Yeah, you don't even have to try.
and it's for
It's
your
just,
body.
but I know, again, these are very simple. It's like telling people how to get out of debt. It's like, have a budget.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't spend more than you earn. And it's just like hard. I don't know why, but we humans, we're wacky. We're wacky. We don't necessarily follow common sense. I can't remember who had the same, but my friend Benazati quotes it all the time, which is, humans are innovative enough to invent all this food, and then we're also like dumb enough to eat it. So, it's like, it's
And
true.
it goes back to what you said with hypnotherapy. It's the psychology that we miss. The body is an interconnected system, but the traditional medical system doesn't look at it that way. And they
Yeah.
look at it like the brain has a certain function, the arm has a certain function. When the reality is they're talking to each other at every moment, right? And it's funny because I look at your website and you see here at Thrive Results Coaching, and you look at your testimonials. I mean, people's faces have changed. People is, just people losing massive amounts of weight. And again, like you mentioned, it all comes back to saying, this is your gene code, and this is the
Mhm.
diet plan that fits your gene code. So,
Yep.
getting a little bit more specific, let's say an ideal client says, okay, Christina, you've given us so much value today. I want to be your client. How
Yes.
does that process work? Do you use telehealth? Tell us a
Yeah,
little bit more about that.
telehealth. I love it ever since the pandemic. It's so easy to Zoom with people. So, yeah, so they would just go to my website, like you said, Thrive Results Coaching, and click on book consultation. And they would meet with me for an hour after filling an intake form. And we would go over all their health history and their family history, and I look at their tongue and their nails and kind of their hair. I ask a lot of questions. It's a 13-page intake form, and it gives us a launching pad to kind of understand what the next right direction is to go. And maybe lab testing is right. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's more they just need accountability, and
Mm.
they're not eating all the right stuff yet. They're still eating lots of junk food. So maybe it's more psychology based stuff, and then we can do testing later. But maybe someone's like, look, I'm doing all the right stuff. I do this, I do this, I do this. I still have bloating. I still have this. I have pain. I don't know. Then we do lab testing, and I have different options for programs that bake in the costs of the lab tests, that where then we can do implementation and accountability together with the lab testing.
What's your thoughts on? And by the way, soon we will have it where you can book directly with her, all on our website. But question is, what's your take on herbal medicine and the use of herbs? Do you utilize that in your practice?
Yeah, a little bit. So where I went to grad school, Maryland University of Integrative Health, there was a whole master's degree in like a whole herbal program, and those students, are fascinating. They go on, they work with big supplement companies, or they have apothecaries like you. Like they really know a lot about herbs, and so I feel like my knowledge of herbs isn't just enough to like know some herbs that are pertinent for certain situations. But yeah, no, that's a whole expertise in and of itself. That's um, no, I have a lot of respect for people who understand the power of herbs. I mean, the whole pharmaceutical industry comes from herbal medicine, honestly. I mean, like if you think about, um, let's pick valerian, right? Valerian root is the basis for Valium. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Maybe someone from the pharmaceutical industry is watching, and they're going to say you're wrong. But
Right.
um, there's knowledge in herbs that then get used to create pharmaceuticals. So things get altered, but they're like the basis is there in the herb. Um, so
So you have an article on the website where you talk about distilled water. And again, back to Dr. Sebi, he's a big fan of alkaline water and alkaline environment. Why distilled water?
So I have a certification in something called RBTI. It's Ream's Biological Theory of Ionization. Carrie Reams was a biophysicist who actually worked mostly in that agricultural field. And he identified, so so in agriculture, kind of like how I cited with plants and the right soil and the right nutrients, there's a way for people, gardeners and farmers, to test all of the nutrients in the soil, or test even the health of their animals. And he was a big part of that. But he sort of like had a download, if you will, of what the perfect numbers for human pH, for human sodium levels, human sugar levels, which could be all be tested in the urine, would be, and then and what would be human perfect numbers. And those are the same across all humans. So where the genetics is like the difference is, the RBTI numbers are the same for everybody. And the optimal digestive pH in urine is between 6.2 to 6.8. It's not 7. Blood is 7.345, but digestive, and then obviously there's different parts of digestion, right? Like your stomach pH is very acidic. And there's optimal pH for the vagina. There's optimal pH for your face. There's different optimal pH for different parts of your body. But he identified that testing urine, it's actually 6.2 to 6.8, with optimal being 6.6. So, so he also taught that to help people balance their numbers, they should drink distilled water for a period of time, not forever in perpetuity, but they should drink distilled water. And he advocated certain types of salt, like kosher salt would be fine, but not sea salt, which is super interesting. So like kind of, it's a very particular and kind of unique set of a philosophy, if you will, that is not very popular, but very fascinating. And I can tell. So the one thing I use it for in my practice, especially when I was seeing people in person, but I can teach people how to buy their own tools, buy them off of Amazon, and to test their urine and their saliva, and to get their numbers. And it's something they can do every day, and it's actionable. And so you can make the tweaks right in the moment. Whereas like the functional lab testing is just like, you do it once, it's expensive. You do it once, that's it. But the RBTI tools, you can use those every day. And I can see when people are dehydrated, and that's the most actionable thing from it, is because their sugar levels and their sodium levels will be high. And those are two things that when they're both high, you can, like, you're very dehydrated. And that's like very useful. And then the other thing is we test saliva pH and we test urine pH. And there are things that you can do in the diet to tweak to get the right pH balance there for both saliva, so that you're digesting your food properly and excreting the food properly.
So our platform has a lot of women, and we work with a lot of women, and a lot of women use the platform. So what tests do you recommend for women, and specific for women's health?
I mean, any of the tests I do are helpful for women. It depends on what a person is struggling with and what they want to optimize. I think if anyone's like understood from this conversation is that, like, my approach is multimodal. And so it's hard for me, like, that question is like, what one thing would you do? I'm like, I don't know. I'd have to have a conversation with that person to kind of, everything is case by case. So maybe for that person, understanding their genetics better would be like the right thing in that right moment. Maybe the person needs a stool testing in that moment. Maybe the person is chronically dehydrated. Maybe they do need to learn RBTI. Maybe that person is like an emotional eater and they need more psychology tools. So they've never really done advanced lab work, and they like haven't seen good blood work. So I can order blood work as well. And they need like more advanced cardiac panel, or they need an insulin resistance panel, or they don't really know what their iron, like a full iron panel, a full thyroid panel. So maybe just regular blood work is like the best thing to do. It's hard to say.
Definitely. So my final question is what are your final thoughts for the audience? What message would you like to leave? Our first was don't test, or don't guess, test.
Yeah.
Then it all depends on your dosha. That's what Stacey Theodosson said. Dr. Volner, she mentioned that really it's all about that tri-communal, the mind, body, spirit. And
Mm-hmm.
naturopathy always comes back to the mind, body, spirit. What say you?
I love all of those. I'm going to say, I'm going to invite people to think more deeply about your health, to age gracefully, focus on longevity, not just exterior outcomes like just your weight. Like think about your whole body as a system, like as a holistic system, that everything is interconnected. Your feelings, like your person, that is mind, body, spirit. Yeah, your emotions are the undercurrent, the soundtrack of what what gets created in the body. And then we have these amazing tools to go and look and see, like to validate, so that you're not like, why am I an anxious person? I don't understand why I came in this way. And then you can get your genetics done, and then you can realize that you're not crazy, that you do have like a whole bunch of anxiety genes, and then what to do about them, like how you can optimize them, and not just through talk therapy.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kristina. It's been a pleasure. And everyone, visit thriveresultscoaching.com. Connect with Kristina, do a consultation, and most importantly, do a test.
Thank you,
This has been
Sam.
our episode. You're very welcome. This has been our recent episode of Decent Med Spotlight. Join us for the next one. So, just a quick thing. So,